thank you very much for finding us here. FALCO, find, focus, and fix the container and cloud threats that matter. Try to say that 3 times in a row in a certain drunken stage, and you will earn a prize from me, I promise you that. So who is that guy standing in front of you talking about security? So as you already heard, my name is Stefan, and in short, I'm a huge nerd. I really embrace the nerd culture. If you have a talk with me or a Zoom session, the first thing you will notice, my office looks like a GameStop. So if you're tired of talking about containers, security and such, feel free to seek us at our booth right in the back, and I'm also here to talk about nerd stuff. But of course, I will concentrate right now on what we are all here for, talking about security in a cloud-native world. Let me draw you a quick picture. Let's imagine we are in a company and we have we found our perfect Kubernetes for us. If I missed some vendors here, ignore it. It doesn't matter. It was just a nice picture I found with a lot of Kubernetes versions there on there. And let's imagine you got your pick. It's running. It's up and running and ready to use. I believe the first people who will enjoy that will be your developers, because now they have the basis to work more productive and faster. Or basically said, the real intention why you would start with Kubernetes anyhow, right? Because you want to be faster, more agile, and more productive in the later end, and you want to be or maybe you want to be a disruptive force in the market. The next person who's happy about this situation would be the operations guys. Because first of all, they made the decision to use Kubernetes, they are managing it, they're providing it, they maintain it. And when the developers are happy, they are happy because they can focus on other things. And last but not least, your boss will love you. Doesn't matter if a CISO, any other C-level, because you're doing a great job, everything is fine, everything is great, the money is rolling in, right? So now I have a quick question for you here right now in the room with me. Please raise your hands if you feel in this situation right now. Oh, you're really harsh on yourself, really harsh. I see at least one hand. Please come back to me later, I have some sweets for you. Anyhow, so yeah, honestly, if I would have been asked the same question as I was an ops guy myself, I would have not raised my hand as well. But hey, let's be more positive about ourselves. So let's say most of us doing a great job. But if you're doing a great job, there's a fourth party who will also enjoy your success. Who can guess? Just a quick one. Who might guess? Can't hear anything, but I will solve it for you. The illegal guys, the hackers. Anything that could be of value to be able to be stolen or manipulated. Maybe they are hired by your competitor to disrupt your business and not theirs. So you always have a fourth party if you are successful and if you are in the media. So what happens next? You got the attention of the wrong people. The first one to scratch their heads is the operations guy. Why? Because they get quite some information they don't want to hear with their morning coffee. They get the reports, the application they are running on their Kubernetes cluster is running sluggish. There are front-end errors popping up, which are customer-facing. This is absolutely not what you want to hear in the morning. Higher CPU consumption. If you already have your journey into the cloud, happy birthday for AWS, because they are the benefiter if your CPUs or memories and whatsoever is more in use than it is usually as you calculate it. New containers are spinning up and you can't explain why. And new files appear out of nowhere. And you know one of those famous last words, nothing was changed. The code was not changed, the environment was not changed, nothing was changed. We have, of course, a good ops guy here. He's doing his job, and he's doing it quite well. So he's checking logs. He's checking the health checks if they are still green. He's checking the container status. He's even going to the dev guys and asking can we have another look at the code and to be sure that your quote is correct. And yes, nothing was changed. In the end, we not only have a head-scratching ops guy, but we also have now not so happy developers anymore, if you remember my first picture. And of course, we have the big guy in our neck who will flip the table if the money is not rolling in as intended, or you will suffer other consequences like bad-mouthing media because your business is not running as it should be. The only party, again, who's happy is our attacker friend, because either he has the data he wants, or he just successfully disrupted your business as you were not intending to. So what was missing? Usually this is where I would ask a question, but I thought it was too obvious. A cloud-native security approach is missing here. And I emphasize the cloud-native approach because we have a lot of security solutions out there. The rooms outside are full of vendors. We are also one of them as Sysdig. We need the cloud-native approach, which can live within a Kubernetes cluster and can adapt to a fast-living development world. Introducing, as Superman, I'm kind of wearing it on my sleeve here, FALCO. Another question which only costs you a quick hand raise, who has heard of FALCO before? I love that, sorry. Thank you very much. Because FALCO, by now, I'm really happy to say, has become a de facto standard in Kubernetes in an open source security approach. And we also have a really, really short but sweet history. Sysdig, as the company, is the same brainchild as from Wireshark. So everyone who's worked with Wireshark know what we do. We collect, or Wireshark does collect data from your network stack to allow you troubleshooting. Sysdig was born with the same intent for Kubernetes networks, so monitoring in your Kubernetes world by collecting syscall information and anything that a container touches during its life cycle. And with that idea, we thought, okay, now we have the information, but we need something like a security camera that can look at the data and can signal you if something is out of the ordinary. So something is going wrong. And this is where FALCO comes in. Also born from the open source, or still living in the open source world, because this is what FALCO is right now. FALCO is an open source incubation project. It was sponsored to the CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And we are still, as you can see here right now, we're spreading the good word in regards of FALCO, because even though I'm talking about FALCO now here, we as Sysdig Secure are using FALCO continuously on, so it's the same world. So how does FALCO does its magic? Because it's always nice to talk about a security feature, but what actually, or how actually does the security work? So like I said before, with monitoring, we continue to collect syscall informations. We do that real quickly. I can tell you more at our booth. We inject kernel modules, or we interconnect or talk with eBPF measures to grab that called information. And to get the information, we can digest and lay a framework, a rule framework above it. And if that's not enough, if you say, hey, wait a second, syscalls of the Kubernetes cluster is nice, or syscalls of a Linux operating system is nice, but what about my Kubernetes audit events? I need to monitor that as well, because maybe the attacker just got its grabby hands on some of the logging information, and I want to make sure that if someone at 3 a.m. logs in, we are alerted. We can do so with the Kubernetes events as it is here seen in the lighter green bubble. The same goes for cloud activity, and I will talk about that in a bit, but we are also doing our very best to develop even more in the direction of cloud interaction, namely AWS CloudTrail and such. But more about that in a second. So, long story short, think of it as a security camera that spots all those people in the crowd, but the guy with the hoodie will be highlighted and will be shown to you with the respective information we found. That's the basic part. I already talked about that, but I wanted to show it in picture as well. So how do we interact with your environment? We can either interact, as you can see, with one of the runtimes, as you can see here, Docker, ContainerD, CRYO. It doesn't really matter at that cost because we are at the kernel level and not at the container runtime level. So this is where we facilitate eBPF to collect the data, and FALCO will supply the security framework to match this data to alerts that can be useful for you. That's a lot of theory, but can we map it to use case and wishful thinking, sorry. Use case, and can we have a little bit more meat on the bone what I'm talking about? So now I have introduced Falco a little bit. Let's go back to our troubled ops guy here for a second. So the use case here would be, the first alert I received, I'm talking now as an ops guy, was from our customer support. Our app ran sluggish. While I checked the front and backend containers, I noticed that the database container created several new files in the temp directory. The developers swore they haven't changed the code. And I also noticed that curl was now available in our database container. This is odd and is not provided by our container image. So how did it come in there? So the use cases I underlined here. And if we look at the Falco rules, we supply, and the community supply, out of the box, you might be already able to map some of those use cases this poor troubled operations guy already told us. Especially terminal shell spawning on the very lower part on the left side here. Read sensitive file, a database spawned process, right below etc. The etc could be something else like temp. So that we provide to you already some rules which you can facilitate out of the box to get started with your security monitoring. And we are not only limited to simple spawn processing or process spawning capabilities, but also in regards of compliance. So we can support you in your journey to be compliant with your workload. And we can, of course, map some rules to well-known vulnerabilities. So if we see some network communication that is bound to a well-known vulnerability, we can even alert you on that. And the same goes for cloud-native stacks. So we are not limited to any certain kind of application. You see quite a lot. And even though your application you're hosting right now might not be in there, it doesn't matter. With the open source thought behind our rule set, the community or even we as Sysdig can help support you to find or create the rule you want to use or you want to get going with your infrastructure. Now let's get a little bit more technical. How would a rule like that look like? So I prepared a little demo. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to take the use case our fellow operations guy said before. There were new files spawned in /temp. Yes, I know what you're thinking. Hey, wait a second, a lot of programs write under temp. Yes, of course, but we can, of course, this is a simple example, but you can create quite a lot of exemptions and you can clarify what we're looking for. I kept it simple. So in that condition, I look for something that creates files and within /temp. The rule goes on because it needs a description. This is the first thing you see before. Right below my monitor directory, a little description. So when someone else is using the rule, they know what I intended with the rule. And of course, the conditions. So when should Falco scream in my face that it found something that's not supposed to be there? And to make it crystal clear that I use this role in my example, I put in the output in the beginning, hey admin. So I added that to make it clear. I can set quite a lot of, so everything can be set with variables. So you can easily reuse rules where you have prepared a list and you want to use that list again. You can do so. Same goes for process names. You want to reuse lists and such. So it makes it really easy to grow your rules list. And of course, you can set priorities. And what I'm often asked is, yes, we can set tags. So if you have another system which will collect the information from Falco, then you can easily find the findings of Falco based on taggings. So I went the really safe route here. I'm sorry for that, but I have enough experience for what can go wrong in a live session. So this is why I went with slideshows, but I will explain what I did there. And hopefully you will see enough that it was done on a real system and not just mocked up. So the first thing I did is, of course, I installed Falco. I did not talk about it yet because it's quite simple. If you go to falco.org, you will see the different flavors. You can either run it at the classical daemon set by deploying a YAML file, or as most preferred, by Helm chart installation. If you want to run it with Docker, let's say, or a Linux host, then it would be the standard binary or service installation with your operating system. So in my case, it's a small Kubernetes cluster. I made sure that my FALCO containers are running. There are totally of 2. The Sidekick containers I will talk about in a second as well. But for now, the FALCO containers are important for me. And basically, to get started, nothing more than you need. It's a daemon set running on all my workers and is talking via eBPF. So here again, you will see my rule, how I will inject that into the FALCO installation. So as you can see, this rules temp YAML file will be injected as a custom rule. So I added the rule I created. And from the slides before, you see it is the rule I was talking about. You can see the hey admin at the output part again. And this is basically what I did. I installed it. And here's the proof for it, because you can see in the last row of loading rules from file, that says at the end rules-temp.yaml. That was the custom file I had one slide before. So I would be ready to go for my monitoring. And again, now I have another deployment, because I want to have, of course, an attack simulation. For that, I go into my bad HTTPD deployment. And as you can see from the command on the bottom, I execute into the container. And I believe some of you, or many of you have been patient when I showed the rules slide. So even I go on now with my demo, I should receive not only one alert when the temp files are created, I should receive 2 alerts. And the second alert I should receive is someone executed into the container. Let's keep that in mind. So here I do my stupid stuff. I am inside the container with a bash shell. I go into temp and create a folder and a simple touch, I am a dump. Easy peasy, no rocket science. Don't worry, I have an enlarged screenshot of that. I know this is eye hurting. Don't worry about it. Just for you to see. So this, what you see right now here, is the FALCO log you will see inside the container of the FALCO container. And I highlighted the 2 rules that sprung to action in my case. The first one, notice a shell was spawned in a container with an attached terminal. That was my Kubernetes execution part. And my self-created rule, hey admin, file below monitor directory open for writing. And you see even get all the informations you want to have at the Kubernetes security architect. You want to see not only that the file has been created, you want to see by whom, which container, which runtime, which process, everything. Because you don't want to miss a piece that could be crucial to hunt down the bad guy. As promised, I highlighted it a little bit more, I enlarged it. Again, this is my shell container where I shelled into the container. And here once more, a little bit better readable. You get really a lot of information, the container ID, so you can make sure that the container that was spun up, even it died maybe already, you still know when it happened. You can still do a little bit of time traveling and see this was the container that hurt. And what I personally really like about is you get even the process information, so you can see that I used the touch to create the file. This is very important in a real life scenario. Most of the time the bad guys will try to get their grabby hands on their source code or on their programs they hosted somewhere. And to get to that, they will use common tools like curl, wget, and so on. And you want to really see what he did to get his code into your valuable containers. So this is what FALCO can supply. If you are like me and you're not that big of a CLI fan, because hey, let's be honest here, this on a big stage that doesn't look fancy, doesn't it? This is where FALCO Sidekick comes in. This is also part of the open source project of FALCO. So if you go to our Git FALCO, you will be also introduced to FALCO Sidekick. it is not only a web UI with not eye-hurting information, but rather giving you the sweet view of it managers enjoy, right? Let's be honest here. And also the tagging you provided will be also very shown in nice information. But even more important, it helps you to create the interconnection from your FALCO alerts to the rest of your IT ecosystem or environment. And Sidekick does it by providing you output capabilities. But again, as I would like to say again, security is only as good as you notice it and you do something about it. So if you have FALCO and you just you're checking your security events, right, okay, you got a tool in place, maybe you can tick off a compliance, but what do you actually do about it? Or how do you take action? And automation is something I hear more and more often. Security must live in an automated world. So this exactly is where Sidekick helps you to earn your wings, so to say. We have quite a lot of capabilities out of the box to integrate with your environment, with your IT environment, and of course many more, like the almighty webhook. There you can set automations on stage. So there's quite a lot that FALCO Sidekick can help you out with. Again, going back to our troubled person here. So what could we have done for this poor soul to help him out in his daily work? The use cases we could align us. We could find out how curl got into the image. I wasn't talking even about that before. So let's imagine what could be a reason a new program spawns inside a container. Yeah, you could download it, right? But if you have a good firewall in place, maybe something else happened, like a yum was executed or an apt-get. And this could be monitored with FALCO as well. So if package managers were run inside a container, which, let's be honest here, should not happen, because you are working with containers and not operating systems, there shouldn't be any possible tool for upgrading your stuff inside the container. We can see when and by whom which new files were created. I hope I showed this with the screenshots more than enough before that we could see when, where, whom, everything we needed in regards of the file. And we can create our own rules or use the rich database from the FALCO community. And I will talk about the community in a slide also, because it's very important. What else can we do? Because now we focus quite laser point focused on Kubernetes. What about the other good stuff I was talking about? AWS, Docker, Okta, Kubernetes audit logs. I already spoiled that point. What about that? Is FALCO a useful tool for that? In short, yes, and it will be even more in the future. Because right now, as you can see from the screenshot here, this is from our Git repository, our public Git repository. We facilitate plugins with FALCO. Those are the ones you can get started from right away today. And we are working on even more integrations. And even though it's not on the screenshot right now, Okta is already in there, as well as Docker. If you say, sorry, Kubernetes is nice, but we settled with Docker for now, you can still get going with FALCO in full force. So, in short, would have been FALCO inside this fine gentleman's company. We could help them out to get back to their old selves, to rock the market and be the top of their class and do what's good for them and for their customers or shareholders or whatsoever. So how could you get started? Since we are an open source project, you will find everything you need in the internet. So here I provided some useful links. You can either photograph it or simply Google falco.org. You will basically find everything you need. The same goes for FALCO GitHub. You will be directed to the same places. But how about joining the community? Actively contributing, actively asking questions, asking for help, support, whatsoever. How can you get started here? Also, quite simple. And this I want to emphasize. The FALCO community, Right now, it's a link. I know, really useful for you right now. But if you would be able to follow the link right now, you would be forwarded to the CNCF Slack channel, the Kubernetes official Slack channel. Because Falco has gained so much importance, we have been moved in there. So if you are already in that channel, search or look up for Falco, and you will be in very good company to get your help right away with Falco, and you will find a lot of people aligned to the security needs. And yeah, the rest is typical the data sharing companies like LinkedIn and Twitter and whatsoever. If you are still hungry for more, and you're not sick of my face already, then we have the on-demand talk right here, right now on the ContainerDays in your application. Here it is Falco meets Mitra, run any Falco installation against Atomic Red. This is very interesting if you're already one step ahead and you have Falco up and running and you want to see how good it is in action, because Atomic Red is a pen testing company. They provide tests for security solutions, and we have set up a blog post which you can follow step by step to set up your own Atomic Red test engine to really bring Falco to be sweaty, so to say, so really do its job. And this talk will be all about it, and we'll show you in that talk how this will look like. So if you stress Falco, so to speak. And again, if that's not enough and you're hungry, we have the Falco Runtime Security Bridge Cloud Visibility and Security Gaps with our Lunch and Learn. So not only a lot of words from my side, but also a free meal. So what else could I say about that one? And if that's not enough, like I said, we have a booth here, right here, and then I can not only relate on screenshots, then I can show you something. If you want, I'm more than happy to welcome you in our booth. And now you have been so patient enough, and I thank you so much for your attention right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your talk. We are a bit ahead on schedule, which is nice because we have a lot of questions.
Wow.
Yeah, so let's start by answering them then.
Alrighty then. Is Sidekick able to feed information from multiple clusters? Yes, it is, because it basically will expect information from your Falco instance. And since we provide quite a lot of configuration possibilities like port forwarding, port changes, and informations, you can also share with other clusters. Is it possible to blacklist all shells in a container except the ones... Oh, it jumped. Where did it jump? Ooh. Okay. This is now my eye test, right? What's different in Sysdig as a product if Falco and FALCO Sidekick is excluded? All right. This is something I love to talk about at our booth, but just a real short summary. Yes, we do work on Falco. We use the same engine, no changes. But, however, the front end is a completely overworked different one. This is the Sysdig Secure front end. We, of course, have the same capabilities and interaction capabilities I was talking about in Sysdig Secure. And we have quite a lot of more features, and especially in the compliance department and in the remediation department. So this is not purely a security cam. I like to compare it as a security cam with Arnold Schwarzenegger arms left and right, because it can really punch the bad guys in the face to prevent any attacks as well. But again, I love to talk it in more detail if necessary and wanted. Are there also pre-made Falco rules or a store package manager where I can load them? Yes, there are. So they will be delivered to you as a YAML file or out of the box when you install it the first time. And you can, of course, facilitate a lot of public available resources, Git repositories, whatsoever, to get your hands on more rules and to talk with the community. What is not included in the OSS version? I a little bit talked about it, so you will look for prevention methods like stop, kill, or pause the container. You can still do that with a little bit of coding and using the almighty webhook, but it's not included. The same goes for compliance capabilities, compliance reports, and such. How resource hungry is the Falco daemon? Quite a difficult answer with an easy question. It depends on your cluster. I could tell you everything right now. It really, really depends on your workload, what you set up, and the rule sets, and how demanding you want it. There are numbers on the documentation, but please keep in mind, let's be realistic. The Kubernetes-related loads always relate on what you do with your cluster. Is Falco just monitoring? I answered that as well. Yes, it is monitoring based on security events. So it's not just saying, oh, CPU goes up, CPU goes down. As we saw it right now, it is telling you more in regards of security. But again, yeah, it's lacking the strong arms to kick out the guys by default. There it is. Can I blacklist all shells except the ones spawned by kdebug? Like I said, you could set up alerts for it, but I wouldn't use the words blacklist for it because they would still run. I emphasize that we are monitoring in that case. So yes, you can set them up. You can create a dynamic filter, you can create a dynamic rule and repump them into Falco, so Falco would be a bit of learning, but it's not really preventing right from the start. Oh, I was dreading that. VMware TKGS integration hurdles known. Yes. In short, yes. VMware will be honest about that as well. They have kernels, of course, which are lacking either the capability of integrating kernel modules or facilitating eBPF. Good news, the newest versions of Tanzu of any kind and the newer based images are so further developed that they allow eBPF, and for that you're good to go with Falco. Does it support managed clusters like AKS? Yes, yes we do. We support that. And does Falco use a default rule set out of the box with best practice coverage? We also answer that. Yes, by default, if you're not fumbling around with the configurations, it will run out of the box with best practice rule sets we provided and the community. Whew, that was quite a lot.
Thank you so much for answering that much questions. In the audience, do we have any questions? Somebody raise your hand. Just in case you forgot to add the questions on Slido.
Yes, we have sweets, and yes, we have more swag. No, I'm just kidding.
No questions? Okay, so thank you a lot for the talk. Thank you all for coming, and please a big round of applause again.
Thank you.